So let's call to order 6:30 p.m. on Monday, August 22nd, the Board of Public Health meeting. The first item on the docket is 312 Forest Animal Permit. Who do we have to speak to this?
Hi, Attorney Jeff DeLisi. I'm here with Carmen Hudson, our engineer, and our clients, Dan and Kelly Bliss.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome. Would you like me to give a brief overview and then have Carmen present the plan?
That would be great.
Okay, great. So the Blisses filed an application that's before you to maintain 3 horses at the property. The Board of Health regulations require that permits issue in order to allow that to occur, specifically a permit to keep animals as well as a permit to maintain a stable. So basically, it's one application for one plan. 2 permits are required. The board may recall that this is a second go-round for the Blisses. About a year and a half ago, the board considered the same permits for a portion of the property before you today. That being a year and a half ago for the merged property at, I think it is 306 and 312 Forest Ave, which at the time had a combined area of about 81,000 square feet. In that particular case, the Blisses proposed to construct a barn and a paddock, and the closest part of the paddock was about 30 feet from Forest Avenue. A variance was required to allow for a portion of that facility to be within 100 feet from the Blisses dwelling. And while the board appeared satisfied with the stable management plan, it was uncomfortable with issuing the variance. And so since that hearing, the Blisses have come across an opportunity to acquire the adjacent property at 318 Forest, which enabled them, once they actually acquired it, to merge all 3 properties, such that the total square footage is about 162,000 square feet. And then they put together the plan that's before you tonight, which in summary proposes to relocate the barn and the paddock hundreds of feet away from Forest Avenue in the rear of the property when compared to the plan from last year. So Carmen will review with the board the site plan. And the plan meets all of the design and setback criteria required by the rules, thus creating a presumption that there would be no impact on neighboring properties. Additionally, after Carmen reviews the plan, I'll ask Kelly Bliss to review the stable management plan. And that stable management plan addresses issues such as manure management, vector management, predator management, noise management. So Kelly is going to tell you that, as in the prior application, she kept her standards extremely high to address those matters. She's collaborated with Holly Hill Farm and John Belber for reuse of manure for farming purposes. And the basic concept of this stable management plan was reviewed and met the approval of Massachusetts Farm Bureau. So I've been in touch with the building inspector, and while building and zoning matters are not within the legitimate purview of this board, this proposed non-commercial use is allowed for residential properties in this zone, and we will continue to work with the building inspector through the process so far as these matters are within his jurisdiction. So just very briefly, under section G of your rules, 70,000 square foot lot is required for 3 horses, and as indicated above, our lot exceeds that number by more than double. So with that, I'm going to give it over to Carmen and let Carmen speak, and then we'll ask Kelly to say a few words.
Thank you, Jeff. My name is Carmen Hudson. I work for Cavanaro Consulting, and I am just trying to share my screen. It says that the host disabled the participating screen sharing.
Oh, Carmen, I was sharing my screen, but you'd rather I give it to you? Let me see.
Yeah, if you could possibly, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
Great.
You got it?
I do. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So here. Okay. Can everyone see this plan showing the existing conditions today?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the plan actually that was submitted with our application, but I thought I would just clean it up a little bit and show you just the existing conditions first, and then the submittal plan and maybe just the proposed conditions for discussion, just because there's so much going on between the proposed being superimposed over the existing. So as Jeff mentioned, the previous application that you saw for the same barn and paddock was for 306 and for 312 Forest Avenue. However, now with 318, this is a very large parcel of land that is 162,000 square feet. At this moment, there is a house at 318 and a detached garage. There is also a pool patio, as well as an elevated patio and a grill and eating area out here. What we are proposing to do is to remove the existing dwelling and existing porches, which is about 2,200 square feet worth of roof, remove the pool and pool patio, and there's actually a concrete area and a slide on this side. All of that will be removed. And we're proposing to keep the detached garage, but put a barn that's 1,932 square feet in place of the existing dwelling. So we're actually putting a smaller footprint for a building. And all of this will just be open and lawn for the horse paddock. The requirements for any animal facility, in this case, the facility would be comprised by the barn and all the fencing. That it has to be at least 100 feet from any wetland. There is a border, there's an isolated wetland over here. An isolated wetland is not protected by the state, but it is protected by the local bylaw. So we are keeping at least 100 feet from the wetland. This is actually the 100-foot buffer zone from the facility. Also, we are supposed to keep the facility which encompasses the paddocks at least 100 feet from any dwelling. As you can see, we have tried to keep at least 100 feet from every dwelling around. There is actually no dwelling on this side. It's also supposed to be at least 30 feet from property boundaries. Everything is at least 30 feet, but in most cases is over 30 feet away from the property boundaries. This is the 30-foot setback. And then all of these properties are served by sewer, so therefore the septic setbacks 100 feet from septic leaching field and 50 feet from any septic component doesn't really apply here. So I just wanted to show you without the existing conditions, just so it would be clear. What we're proposing is this barn by removing the existing dwelling and porches, and we would be removing the pool and patio, putting this paddock on. We're also proposing a filtration system. However, when I originally designed this infiltration system, all of this area was proposed to be lawn. Right now, it's a combination of trees and brush. And after listening to some concerns by a neighbor, the Blisses wanted to respond by leaving an area of over 60 or about 6,600 square feet of untouched vegetation on this side. This is about 30 feet, and this side is over 40 feet. So all of this area will be untouched. The vegetation will remain as it is today. So actually this infiltration system is going to get smaller because now we're for converting less shrubbery into lawn. That will be, that will have a final design during a stormwater permit. But the runoff is actually expected, with something this big, it would be reduced, but we would at least match the stormwater runoff, and that is a requirement for a stormwater permit anyways. So as you can see, and like Jeff mentioned, for 3 horses, we need 70,000 square feet, and this has over 162,000 square feet in lot area. So with this, Kelly, if you could possibly go over the management, that would be wonderful.
Of course. Pam, do you have the management plan to pull up?
I do. Yep. Hang on one second.
Great. No, that way I don't have to get access to the screen.
R1. Let's see.
So while Pam is pulling it up, let me thank you to the board members for your service to the public. And we appreciate, Dan and I really appreciate the opportunity to present the stable management plan as a component of our application. First, the composition of the stable management plan that I'm going to review, thank you, Pam, was drafted directly from those elements stated as requirement for general care and keeping of animals set forth in the Cohasset rules and regulations governing horses, stables, cloven, livestock, fowl, and poultry. That said, this application is not for the keeping of swine or cow or chickens, and I think it's worth noting that this barn encompasses the use of modern day best practices, techniques, and technology. It was also, as Jeff had mentioned, previously reviewed by the Mass Farm Bureau Association, and I personally benchmarked it against other in-town thriving horse barns for additional feedback. Finally, when it was presented to the board 2 years ago, it was praised for its comprehensive nature. So why don't we just slip on to the first slide, first page of the plan. It starts with manure. Obviously, all of the components that Jeff had mentioned that are requirements for a stable management plan are in here and then some. But I would note that as a small backyard facility, of course, daily, weekly, monthly schedule a part of the quality management plan. I would say that within our extended plan, we also maintain records on things such as individual horse nutrition, vaccinations, turnout schedules, pasture management, things that aren't required for the application, but are important for caring and keeping for these animals. Manure management is obviously not only a key component of keeping a barn looking and smelling clean, but it's very important for equine foot health, fly remedy, and keeping a white horse white. I have a white horse. And our manure management plan includes cleaning of stalls regularly. It also includes use of morning cleanings, but then rebedded with kiln dried wood shavings and a rubber subfloor that forces absorbing of the manure into those wood shavings. So this not only reduces any odors, but it's good, obviously, for the horses. As a part of our plan, manure will be taken off-site, as Jeff had mentioned, on a regular basis to Holly Hill Farm, where it's going to be used to help naturally fertilize their plants and vegetables, but also a part of the Holly Hill education program through the Cohasset schools. And so they are thrilled to have this quote unquote gold. As far as storage of the manure on site and transport to Holly Hill during the week, we pictured here a manure dump trailer like the one here. We'll have the trailer will be stored on the side of the 318 garage, which is furthest on the property from any residence, and will be surrounded by new landscaping to create a further barrier from site. Additionally, within a good management plan, you'd have pasture management, which is really important. Pasture management, in addition to keeping the barn itself clean, which is obviously where the horses spend most of their time in the barn. But we're proposing as a part of this plan, this unique pasture management tool, which is basically a ride-along pasture management vacuum where it becomes quite easy to clean out pastures. And it allows for us to maintain the health of the grass, watering, mowing on a regular basis. So next on the management plan is vector management. So vector management, a big part, obviously maintaining a clean plan with manure management is the best way to prevent any unwanted pests. They're really only interested in if the food is easily accessed. My horses are currently at a barn with 45 other horses, and there is zero pest problem because of the way in which they maintain containers that are sealed and locked in a feed room. Additionally, we use in our house from 1890 Wi-Fi enabled mouse traps that alert us to immediate text message if there's a rodent caught for quick disposal. Additionally, as a part of vector management, insect control is really a big component. And it can be managed through a couple of different ways, one of which was a great idea from one of the other barns in town. And we plan to leverage that and deploy maximum control. So starting with a feed through fly control. So these are things that are put directly in the horse's feed that make sure that they eliminate the eggs from hatching within their manure. It's bad for the flies, doesn't harm the horses. Another important way to control bugs is to eliminate any standing water. And this is a new technology that is proven even in the Northeast, the climates of the Northeast, where we leverage an on-demand watering system. It's just like seen here. It looks like sort of a PVC post that comes out of the water with a paddle. So the horses bring their nose down and the water is drawn up for drinking, but it allows no standing water on the premises. So obviously convenience is a great benefit, but perhaps more importantly, it eliminates standing water, mitigates sources from bug breeding grounds. So finally, in that same area is using fly parasites. Again, another idea from another one of the farms in town, which is basically a sprinkle that goes on any manure to kill any fly parasites. You can put it along fence lines and any areas that you might want to just maintain pest control. And then finally, predator management. I think this, again, is maybe applicable to other types of animals that would be requested in an application like this, but horses, full-grown horses don't have predators. Horses will be stabled in the barn at night with the doors closed. We'll outfit it with motion-sensitive video cameras to alert us to any predators or any unwanted guests that come near the barn. And then further, we propose this new premium equine fencing. It's called Buckley fencing. It's a steel-based, recycled steel-based fencing. It's of highest quality and strength, and it beats any of the equestrian standards available. They use these in many of the Kentucky, large equine facilities. And then noise management, another piece of the plan, sound dampening barriers. Noise is very minimal typically from horses. We do plan to put additional plantings, as I mentioned before, around the property. Those double as a sound and wind barrier. The animals will again be in the barn at night. We don't anticipate them being any loud. They're not naturally loud. Sometimes there's a whinny or a neigh, or in larger equine facilities, when horses, you're feeding 40 horses at a time, you might feed one horse, and by the 39th horse, they're stomping their feet or whinnying to get fed. With 3 horses, start to finish, it's a 5-minute process. So that won't be an issue. And then I would say that, when you're caring for these animals in particular, these are, athletes, and experience really does matter in constantly monitoring and improving upon the plan. I've grown up with horses all my life. I've had horses either in my own backyard facility. I've managed working on a farm, much of my young youth. And I think that one of the things that's most important is that you're constantly revisiting the plan. Is it working? Does there need to be adjustments to the plan? And I think all of which we have really addressed here. There's some reference material in here for some of the products that I referenced, as well as what we're proposing in terms of a barn style, which is a post and beam style, creates a really ideal layout for horses. We are thrilled by the neighbor support and excitement that we've seen. People frequently will stop by while walking by the main house to tell us how excited they are to see the improvements, and they can't wait to see the horses. We've received support from 8 of the direct abutters and much support from non-abutters. And I would land on maybe through a wider context, we believe this to be the exact type of project that will counter the overbuilding and subdivision of our town by bringing back larger lots and the diversity of land use, which makes our town so special. So thanks for listening.
Great,
So that
thank you.
concludes, yeah, that concludes the presentation. If you have any questions.
That's great. Thank you. We have a lot of folks on the line here, and I'm guessing some are our neighbors. So I figured that maybe we can ask some sort of factual questions from the board first, get clarification on a couple of things that as they come up, and then we'll open it up for comments and questions from the abutters and others who are here.
Great.
So I had one question about I was trying to, on my tiny laptop screen, I was looking at the site plan. Is that paddock on a hill, and what's the slope on that hill? And I think you said it was graded towards the barn.
Mhm.
So the grading actually goes in a diagonal. So the barn is here on the lower right-hand side, and the topography goes like this. It's a diagonal. So most of it, the grade isn't changing that much. It will be primarily a fill in most of the area that will be used for the paddock. The paddock consists of a smaller paddock close to the barn and a larger paddock for a bit further away. So most of it is a fill, but the fill isn't very great, perhaps about a foot. And then there's a little bit of cut towards the rear, because the rear it's a little bit, so the larger paddock is here, this part would be a cut and everything else would be a slight fill.
And so the runoff then ends up.
The runoff will continue going in the same direction. The only thing that we have done is that we have added, so before we were calling for some yard drains, and we're going to be capturing runoff and infiltrating it underground, and then there's going to be an overflow, probably a couple of overflow pipes. In this case, we have, once again, as a response to some neighbor concerns, we added more yard drains. So there's going to be, most of the runoff is going to go to the infiltration system first, and then it will overflow. And once again, it's going at a diagonal, so that it will continue going at a diagonal, also post construction.
Okay. Thank you. That's
You're
very helpful. Robin or Elizabeth, questions?
I just had I had a question. One of the abutters was asking that to increase the buffer distance from their house. And I'm wondering if that's not a conservation issue and not something that we should take up here.
Robin, I think what I had heard was there was a question as to whether and if I'm misstating, please let me know. I thought that there might have been a question about the 100-foot setback being calculated from the dwelling itself,
Right.
or from any outdoor living space associated with the dwelling, such as patios. And looking at the bylaw, it's clear that the setback is to be from the facility to the dwelling. So we hit that requirement.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Elizabeth, any questions?
You're on mute, Elizabeth.
You're still on mute, Elizabeth. There you go.
Hi, unmuted.
Hi.
Hello. So the only question that I guess I also had kind of followed on the stormwater runoff, but that's really a matter for Conservation Commission. And it was more about, did you design your, I guess now I'm getting too far down the rabbit hole, but did you design your infiltration ultimately for like 100-year flood, or what were your 100-year storm, or what were you thinking?
Yeah, so the infiltration system that is shown there was using all the entire part of the lot, the rear part of the lot as lawn. And we were still reducing the post, that's the peak rate of runoff, so how fast stormwater flows and the volume for all the 2-year, 10-year, and 100-year storms. So it was going to surpass their requirements. However, now that we have left 6,600 square feet of untouched vegetation, that infiltration system is overkill. So I am going to have to redesign it for when we go for a stormwater permit. But yes, the one that you saw on the plan, it handled up to the 100 years.
Yeah, so I'm fairly new to the board. I wasn't here for the original hearing, but from reading the management plan, it seems sound, and appears to me that the design's in keeping with the Cohasset animal regulations under the public health jurisdiction. So I have no further questions this time.
Great. Thank you. Before we switch to discussion between the board members, wonder if there are any neighbors or others from the public who'd like to speak to this particular issue.
Hi, this is John Greenup. I abut to the rear, and I am on a little bit of a tight schedule. So if I could bring my concerns up first, I'd appreciate it.
Yep. What's your address?
I'm at 62 Black Rock Road.
Got it. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hey, Pam, I don't know if you can put the letter that I sent to you up on the screen and share it, just so I can go over it quickly, so I don't necessarily have to read it all. We can all see it at the same time.
Okay, I'll pull it up.
And I also would like to thank the board for their service. I know you guys have a volunteer job that sometimes feels like much more than that. So I appreciate what you guys all do.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
Sorry, I can't believe I don't see this. Hang on. Oh. Oh, here we go. Let me just share my screen. Oh, that's not the right one. Sorry. There we go.
There we go. No, thank you. So, we got the notice from the Board of Health that there was going to be a project behind us. So I first sent a few questions over to Pam, and that's when Carmen was talking earlier about a few things that she had addressed. And then I had spoken with John Hallen as well. And then I had a subsequent conversation with him. But before that, I outlined some concerns that we have. And I'll just kind of briefly go through them. The first one, and I think some of the board members spoke briefly about this as well, is the storm runoff. We've been in our house for a few years, and what I learned, since building our house and then since living in it, is that many of the abutting properties to us drain into our side yard. And we experienced this. I know it's been dry over the past 12, 14 weeks, but prior to that, we probably had more rain in the last 18 months prior to that than we've had in a really long time. And as we know, in New England, and specifically in Cohasset, when the water freezes, it just runs. The water runs on top of the frozen soil. And even through that brush that Carmen was just speaking of, we've had a couple, 2-3 inches of water down in that lower area, which is actually our yard. That's our side yard. Looks to the south. We have a patio down there, and at one point it actually landed on the patio a little bit, but then receded. And if you drive further up Black Rock, our neighbors towards Forest Ave, you can see in some of those storms that there's been ponds, in between 100 Black Rock and I think it's 70. There's been water there, and so what I've noticed, and pardon my engineering analysis, I'm a frustrated engineer by trade, but all the way from the lot that Carroll Parks still owns, which is adjacent to 318, all the way back through 318, and then along the side yard of 70, all that water runs and it ends up on our side yard. And the most important thing to me is, over the test of time, when that water is just plain rain runoff, that's it's a bit of a nuisance, but hey, when it rains, we have a lot of ledge, we have a lot of peat, but eventually it'll soak in. Our concern is that with horses back there, and I do appreciate the waste management plan. I do have a few questions on that I'll get to in a minute, but the risk that is there is that waste could be, especially in the winter, if a couple of days go by, or a day, and again, I no disrespect as to how well you're going to maintain the paddock with that very unique lawnmower machine. I think that's genius. But if in fact that's not maintained, and then we get one of those storms, those nor'easters that come in, and piles rain, similar to from what I heard from the home front this morning, it'll come down on our yard. And to me, that is as serious as wetlands, because that's where kids play. The wetlands, yeah, you're going to get a little plume, no disrespect to conservation, but this is where, kids are in the yard rolling around, whether it's somebody's grandkids or whoever. And I don't mean to embellish on that, but I really believe that a more detailed engineering documents need to be, completed before we can really be assured. What I saw, at least what I thought I saw in the drawings I've seen to date, are more schematic and level and not necessarily engineered. Maybe those calculations are completed somewhere, but to me, I would ask that the Board of Health want to see a more detailed plan with a topo that really lays out what those grades are across currently and in the future, and bring them right down, and it'll really let you know where those grades basically confirm what I'm saying right now, that it drops off between the fence of the pool next to me at 70. There's that little back area right there that it just kind of runs right in there along the side yard. So I feel like there's more work that needs to be done there to really ensure that runoff doesn't end up. I'm not saying that you put in some sort of when you put in a septic system next to a wetlands. In the past, I've seen some sort of liner, like a pool liner they put in. And I know Carmen said that there's some overflows. I actually have an overflow in mine from my stormwater that we put in, and it has a pipe that actually ends up further off to the side over there. I don't know where this overflow is going to end up, because I'm sure the water that's contaminated will end up inside that basin. Where does it end up when it eventually does overflow in that significant storm, maybe in a frozen ground situation? So that's my first question.
Okay.
I don't know if
can
you
we-
want to answer those one at a
I-
time, or if you want me to keep going.
I would just like to ask, perhaps, sorry, I lost your names now. Hold on, stand by. I wonder if maybe Ms. Hudson or somebody who can speak to any of those concerns.
Yes, hi. So as far as stormwater is concerned, that is going to be, finally addressed with a stormwater permit with the Conservation Commission. However, as I had mentioned to Elizabeth before, what you had seen before was considering, everything, all of that brush being removed and converted to lawn, and the peak rate of runoff and volume. So that is, once again, how fast water would flow, the peak. So that is the fastest that it would flow during the 2-year storm, the 10-year storm, and the 100-year storm, as well as the volume. So that is, imagine having a bucket and being at the lowest point outside the property and capturing the water in that bucket. So the bucket post-construction would have less water than the bucket before construction. So that was under those conditions. And as I mentioned, now with leaving the 6,600 square feet worth of brush untouched, that infiltration system doesn't even need to be so big. So, and just to be clear, for a stormwater permit, it's not a requirement to reduce stormwater rate of runoff or volume. It is not to make things worse. And as it was designed prior, this was actually going to make things better. If, obviously stormwater runs off, and in this case, yes, the property in the back would be, it's lower than this property. However, the intent of the stormwater permit is not to solve any problems, is not to create any new problems. And as it is with, once again, the design that we have, the rate and the volume were going to be reduced. Eliminated, no, but reduced. So made better than existing conditions. Now, of course, I haven't designed the new stormwater design, but regardless, it is not allowed in the town of Cohasset once you require a stormwater permit to make things worse. So I hope that helps John feel better, that it is not something that would be allowed at all. It can only be the same or better.
I have a point to make as well, if that's okay.
Sure.
Great. So my point is stormwater. I think what I heard was contaminated stormwater was the particular issue. And, we've spent a lot of time on our manure management plan, our pasture management plan, the purpose of which is to ensure that the manure is removed from the property on a regular basis and then removed off site. And so the concept here is that even though we're under stormwater standards, not required to make things worse, and in fact, we'll be improving the situation, that is to be read in conjunction with the fact that our paddock plan has us removing the manure entirely. If for some reason, and I know Mr. Greenup, he makes a good point, if for some reason we don't do that, this board retains jurisdiction over this permit. This permit is an annual renewal permit. So if for some reason we're sliding in our responsibilities, you have the discretion to address that the next go around. So that would be my point to add there.
Yeah, if I could just, no, thank you. I appreciate that. The follow-up I would have, and Attorney DeLisi, thank you for that, because I think you heard me, my concerns. And to Carmen, what I'd like you to think about is exactly what Attorney DeLisi just said, is that we do need to make it better, because the water now does not have the level of contamination that we could have, notwithstanding an excellent manure management plan that we haven't necessarily implemented yet. We have a plan for it. But as we know, when you put a plan in place, implementation and execution of that plan is paramount. And what we don't want to have is a risk of, we want to mitigate the risk if that plan is not, if somebody goes on vacation and the guys who are supposed to come and do the work don't show up because there's a labor issue. We don't have any second chances, because once there's an issue, there's a big issue. Once this, if anything ever washed in. So I maintain my point. I would like you to relook at that design of the storm management plan and see if we can improve it, because it's not just water. We're not just dealing with storm water because of impervious like you typically would design it. What we're dealing with is with contaminants. So that's what I'd ask you to do, Carmen.
Thank you. We'll take that into consideration. I appreciate your points. It seems like there's a balance of different things at play here. You said you had another point you'd like to make?
Oh yeah, just a couple more, just a few more, but I appreciate it. So the second point I wanted to make, and this is where, and again, I don't claim to be an attorney, but we're mixed up a little bit here with whether it's zoning or health, and I do believe that they're somewhat related, because I think zoning put zoning regulations in place because of health issues. So I do think that this board should hear some of those things, and they are in the purview of this particular board. And that's the one of no odor and or sound beyond the property line. Now, when I brought that up, there was a point about the brush in the back. And again, the one thing I want to make clear here, and I want to back up just a second, and this is not about us, meaning your neighbors, and I say this to the Bliss family, trying to stop anything. What this is about safety. This is about trying to let you do what you think you need to do on your property without disrupting your neighbors. And I'm not trying to make it impossible, but I'm in the planning business, and for me, when something happens on something that is extraordinary, keeping 3 horses in a residential area is extraordinary, and that's why these regulations are in place. And that's why it should be hard. The burden of effort should be on the applicant, because this is unorthodox. And I realize there used to be farms here. There used to be a gas station, I think, on the other lot that you bought. But this is a big deal now, because we are directly affected. I know some of the other neighbors aren't necessarily directly affected anymore, but right now we are. So I just say that because I don't mean it from a personal level, except that we are trying to be personally protected by the rules and regulations in the town of Cohasset, and some of the goodwill of our neighbors, taking into consideration the points that we're bringing up today. But the second one is really about the brush. And the point we're trying to make is that in that east wind, we are, and I'm not going to talk about how the, horses, well, I've learned a lot about horses. I'm actually working on a horse track right now in Western Mass, trying to help a developer build a horse track. But so I'm learning a lot about horses, talking with a lot of folks about them. And they are, as you described, athletes, and they're skittish. I happened to be at a track yesterday and saw 12 people trying to push one horse into a gate. And let me tell you, they struggled. They had to actually scratch the horse, but they are very skittish animals. So when you think about, how are we going to make sure that during that wind or during that nor'easter storm that we're somewhat protected? And I mentioned to Pam, maybe there's other trees that could be added, something that is more year round of evergreens along with the brush, because that brush that you see there, those are just overgrown briars and weeds. All those leaves go away. So really, we have clear vision. We could see the pool that was back there, in the winter months. So in those winter months, that's when the wind shifts from southwest to northeast. And that's when all those winds are going to come, and there's not going to be any leaves on those trees. So what I asked in my question number 2 is, I'd like you to really take a peek at what type of design could be implemented to give us that protection from the smell, noise. Hey, there's going to be noise in the neighborhood because, as we know, when those winds come in, they howl, and that's going to happen. But really, I think that there's some work that needs to be looked at with that noise and with the odor. And again, the waste management plan is critical, but again, it's all about the implementation. With no disrespect to Attorney DeLisi, I don't want to have to come back next year. I don't want to have to come back next month. If there's horses there and there's a problem, we failed. That's why these laws were put in place. That's why these regulations are here to be implemented. And they are meant to be very, very hard. No odor or sound beyond the property line, with the burden of the effort on the person that wants to bring horses on the residential area. I think you just really got to really look at that. That's what we'd ask for, is to really, I know they do it Midwest when they put houses next to chicken farms. They came in, they bring in special studies. I know in the city, we do it with wind, shadow, air, and light studies that we do. Anytime you build a high-rise building in the city, you really have to go through those extraordinary efforts. I'd ask, with this extraordinary request that you're making of the town and of your neighbors, that you put in some of that effort for number 2 as well. I'd like to just jump into number 3 before if somebody wants to respond, because number 3 was really a similar issue with the 100-foot buffer zone. Right now, as Attorney DeLisi mentioned, it goes to our house. In the back of our house, is a patio, and that's where we do probably 50% of our cooking, on that patio. And the concern that we have is, where did the health department come up with 100 feet? I'm assuming, and again, I hate to assume, but it was probably something to do with health and with those pests and or rodents. They can be, again, with a not so perfect management plan. Again, I know you've got a really good one in place, but with my cooking area back there, I think that is at more risk than even a dwelling. And the other point that I made is that if in fact you build the stable as it's planned, and then for some reason in the future, I want to add on to my house, which is my right, I've now lessened the buffer zone. And I'm not sure whether the dwelling meant dwelling on a property, whether it meant any dwelling, but I don't think that that's an unreasonable request. Maybe that paddock becomes smaller to give me what is my right to add on to my house, back to my back setback, with a patio on there, especially because right now I'm in open air cooking nice burgers on that patio. And as you mentioned, when there's a food source, the pests jump around. So I don't know if that's my next one. I do have one more after that, but if anybody wants to respond to that piece, I'd appreciate it.
I would like to, I will just comment on it from my point of view, and I tend to align with Attorney DeLisi in terms of the reading of it. It's very clear it's about dwelling. And I also believe that our town setbacks of 100 feet are actually more stringent than other neighboring towns. I think, Cam, you could probably keep me honest on this one. But your point is well taken, and it's something we definitely will have to consider, and we will discuss that. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just briefly, in response to those well-articulated points by Mr. Greenup, on the issue of the setbacks, just briefly, I think that the setbacks are there to create a presumption that if you meet these design requirements, these setbacks, then the presumption is that there would be no harm. And that's exactly the reverse of that is what we kind of encountered a year and a half ago when we were before the board. So I think if we meet the setbacks, there's a presumption that there would not be a noise or an odor. I might also add the standard for this board is not no noise or odor. What Mr. Greenup is referring to is some language in the zoning bylaw, which I think he's dealing with the building inspector on, and I've had a conversation with the building inspector as well. So I think the standard of applying no noise, you know, at the, you know, is at the property line is not the standard that this board is required to look at. As far as the plantings are concerned, the buffer area, in communicating with my client as we're talking, she's certainly willing to consider looking at that area. We don't want it to hold up this application, but we will be looking into that because we do recognize that as the seasons change, there are differences. And so as far as adding on, you know, to property 100 feet, if Mr. Greenup were to add on to his property and make his house larger in the rear, he would not be precluded from getting any permit from any board as a result of this paddock. What would happen, I think, is we would probably be, you know, applying, you know, to the board and looking at it at if and when that were to occur.
Might I just address one other thing, John, that you had mentioned, and thank you, Jeff. Yes, you know, we certainly appreciate you might not want to look at the horses, and we're happy to look at whether or not there's some additional evergreens that could be put in. I would also like to just call into question, you had mentioned the 70 Black Rock, which is the Souza's property. And Pam, I know the Souza's had written you directly, owners of Black Rock, direct adjacent property, that John had mentioned, concern from, you know, rain on the 70 Black Rock. And Darren submitted a letter of support in a previously voiced support, and then reiterated his support after we submitted the modifications. So he was supportive either way, maintains in his email that he appreciates obviously the good stewardship, but they've also have view direct line of sight and are thrilled to have direct line of sight. So he articulates from their kitchen window, they'll be able to see the horses and they're thrilled by it. I appreciate, John, that not everybody has that same perspective. His pool is right in, you know, could view the paddocks as well, and they're thrilled. One other thing, you had mentioned the thoroughbreds. I totally agree. Thoroughbreds are what they call hot-blooded. I don't own thoroughbreds. I used to own a thoroughbred when I was young. For that reason, they are, I would never put my daughter, who also is an accomplished equestrian, on an untrained thoroughbred, certainly one from the track. So I appreciate thoroughbreds and what they're all about. And we have warm bloods and actually a cold blood, a draft cross. So
Thank you.
You know, just piggybacking on Kelly briefly, I don't know if the board would want to know who wrote in support, or if those letters would be appropriate to read into the record, but I know Pam has them, and certainly, I don't know if they made them into your packet.
Pam circulated them to us, and I think we'll include them in the record. I don't know if we need to read them in order to get them in the records, but we'll definitely include them.
I just wanted to add one other thing too, to address the question about where do these setbacks come from. And local boards of health are supplied usually some kind of template from the Massachusetts Health Boards Association. That's like a legal group, and they will like put together a basic outline that towns can use for certain regulations. I mean, it might be like pools or animals, or a recent one just came out for private wells. And I think this template for this one was originally put together by the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture. And so, like Attorney DeLisi said, the setback values that they put in there are presumed to be protective. So when they talk about like 100 feet from the nearest dwelling, it's assumed that that would be a protective distance.
Yeah, no, I read those as well, Pam. Thank you. And I think the one that was notable was 200 feet from a gathering place that I also read in the state regulations. But I think that, again, I'm going to stress that point about our back patio. And I would like the applicant to consider, you know, bringing back some distance, you know, at that point, whether, you know, whether the town look at it or whether they look at it or whether we have to look at it together. I don't think it's an unreasonable thing, especially with the risk that that could be there from that are the same 100 feet from a dwelling. But I guess that's all we can talk about with that one. But my last one is a
Mr.
bit
Gannett?
interesting. Yes,
Sorry.
sir.
I have the email that you sent to Pam, and number 4 is entirely the zoning board purview. Is that what you're going to talk about, is the zoning issue?
Yeah, and we can deal with that separately, except that the Board of Health also defines a lot. And I think that, again, some of these, you know, when you, there's a lot of overlap with various, you know, the towns. And, you know, my first question to John Hallen was that, why wouldn't we be sure that we can build this, you know, from a zoning perspective before you go to health? It's kind of like when you get a building permit and then you get a certificate of occupancy, you don't bring the Board of Health in until later because you don't want to waste their time until you can even do it because you guys are busy and you got plenty to do. But I do believe that there's overlap there with the definitions, and he did talk about some precedent that he believed, but the thing that may be a health issue, and again, I'll just say a couple of things with this. The fact that it's an LLC is a bit concerning. One, because, you know, I was curious of whether it was a business. Maybe it's just a way to hold on to the land. But the other thing that an LLC does is it's a way to limit the liability of the applicant. And my point about that is that this, again, is very unorthodox to have 3 horses in a residential neighborhood in a few people's backyard. And God forbid something happened with those horses. They get spooked by a pack of coyotes or something, or a windstorm or something. And you've done a lot of thought putting this whole thing together. And I do appreciate that you know a lot about horses. You know a lot more than I do. But to know all that about horses and then to put a vehicle in place to limit your liability so that if those horses ever did anything, that somebody's got to chase some business. And again, I might be overstepping, and I don't want you to take me the wrong way. But if you're so confident that this is going to work, I would think you'd want to stand right in front of this and merge those lots together and have it be, you know, in your single name, so that you're standing in front of those horses, not behind the LLC.
So, yeah,
And again,
so
I
that's
apologize.
That's outside the scope. I think that's really outside the scope and the purview of the Board of Health. I hear what you're saying about perhaps going to the zoning board first may have been a good idea, but anything that we do is contingent on that anyways. But your point is well taken. And the email of this in the entirety will be entered into the record as well. So thank you for taking the time. You've taken a lot of time out of your day to come and just talk about this, and I think we really appreciate it.
No, and I appreciate what you guys are doing. And again, I just would hope that we'd consider trying to do all this the right way, so that we can all, as Pam said, you know, to put these in a protective way, not restrictive. I'm not trying to restrict. I'm just trying to be sure that myself and others are protected by the regulations and the goodwill of being good neighbors. So I thank you all for your time. I got to go on my next college tour, but
Good luck with that. Thank you very much for your time.
thank you.
So are there other folks who would like to speak to this particular matter?
I'd like to jump in. My name is Dave Dugan, 100 Black Rock Road. We share pretty substantial property line with the Blisses. We support this plan. We've lived in our house for 22 years and plan to live here for a long time. Blisses have been great communicators in writing. In our opinion, this is a very detailed plan that lines up with everything that's in the zoning. Dan gave me a walkthrough at the property, explain where things are going to be. And we're entirely comfortable. The two things that we talked about was if there ever was an issue with odor that we noticed from our house, we would just give the Blisses a call, and we're very confident it would be addressed. They live as close to this area as we do, and they have an outdoor swimming pool and kids. So I'm confident they would address it. And the second thing we talked about was if there ever was any kind of visual issue or we noticed dust and we wanted some screening, same thing, we give them a call, and we're very confident it would be addressed. They keep their property up to a super high standard. And the fact that this is renewable every year, I think gives everybody some control and some confidence that if there was an issue, it would come back up for a renewal discussion. So we're very supportive. We think it's a cool thing. I love the support of the green space. I'm glad this is minus one house and adding green space versus the other direction, which is what pretty much everybody else in town does. So supportive, and appreciate how professional the Blisses have been to us.
Thanks,
Thank
Dave.
you, Mr. Dillon.
Chad Baylog. I'm another one of the abutters directly across the street, and I think I can wholeheartedly support and similar to Dave, the Blisses were as thorough with me in the preparation for this plan or plans. I've been around for both iterations, and I must say I'm even more thoroughly impressed with the commitment to improve and address any potential issues and be as forward-looking as possible. And for what it's worth, this is anecdotal, but I've even pressure checked with other stable owners that I know, and their feedback was that this was a more comprehensive and more all-encompassing plan than even anything that they've seen. So I have no concerns whatsoever from my perspective, and I'm fully supportive as well.
Thank you, Mr. Baylor. And sorry, what was your address again, just for the record?
I am at 4 Forest Notch.
Great, thank you. I think, unless there's anyone else has more comments.
Michael.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Robin.
Based upon the concerns of Mr. Greenup, I'm under the sense that we should continue this hearing to see if the Blisses and the Greenups can come to some accommodation. Then we can sweep all this away.
So I was thinking that you and Elizabeth and I would discuss it, and perhaps that might be an outcome from that discussion, but I have some points I'd like to make for one part. But if you would like to make that, if you're making that as a motion, that you can do so.
I like move that we continue the hearing until further discussions are held between the applicant, the Blisses, and the Greenups. And we have some resolution of the issues.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to continue this. This is the second. So we have no second, unless Elizabeth, you're having trouble getting off of mute. You're still on mute though. There you go.
Hi there. Could we have, is it possible for us to have a brief pause and talk amongst the board?
Yeah, I'd like to do that, but we definitely have a motion we have a motion that has not been acted on yet. We just have to get that done. So I'm not going to second it at this point.
You're not going to second it at this point?
Mm-mm.
I think we should
Okay.
pause and have a discussion.
Thank you. So the motion fails at this point. So from my standpoint, just based on having seen the first round of plans, considering what we've been through before, in this round of plans, this was, in my view, met all of the the setback requirements, the plans that are written out. If you just follow the letter of the regulations, it's hard to say it doesn't meet them. I mean, yes, it's a property in the middle of a residential area, but it has 100-foot setbacks all the way around it. And the 100-foot setbacks are leading up to the dwelling, which is what the rules are. And so I actually have, I'm definitely sympathetic to your neighbor's concerns. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, you may decide you want to work with him on that, but I would personally have a problem standing in the way of approving this from the Board of Health standpoint. That's just my opinion. Just simply because you check the box, you basically bought another piece of property and built the setbacks in that way and designed it such that you hit all the setbacks. So and as I said, the plans are pretty solid. So
Appreciate that.
was this Robin?
I would concur with your sentiment.
So so if we have no other points to make, I'd like to move to approve the, and sorry, I need to get this right. Hang on, let's make it the address right. I move to approve the animal permit for 312 Forest Avenue.
I second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, motion carries 3-0. So you are done with us.
Well, does that, Mr. Chair, should you be also issuing a stable permit as well, or is that inclusive within? It might be better just to make that separate vote.
Yeah, nowadays it is all in one, but you could just amend it to include a stable permit as well.
Okay, I move to, okay, so let's do it right. Let's do the whole thing. So that was the animal permit. Now we need to, I move to approve the stable permit at 312 Forest Avenue.
I second.
Second, all in favor, aye.
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 Aye, all in favor, 3-0.
Thank you very much. We greatly appreciate your
Thank
professionalism.
you very much.
Very, very good. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Okay, on to other things. We have meeting minutes from July 7th to approve. I read through them, and I think Elizabeth, you read through them. Robin, did it look okay to you?
So, I move to approve the meeting minutes from July 7th, 2022.
Second.
Right, all in favor? Aye.
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 Motion carries 3-0 for the meeting minutes. Very good. We should set the next meeting date. And where are we? Do you have a sense, Pam, for stuff coming down the?
We already do have a couple of things for the September meeting. We have a well permit, and John Hallen, the building inspector, wants us to consider adopting some pool regulations to require fence around pools. So that's two things. That'll be a public hearing. We have to advertise it. So that's why we couldn't make it to the August meeting. So like 3 weeks, I mean, like a month from now would be good. The week of September, like 19, 20, 20th, September 20th. Would that work for people?
So how about 6:30 on Tuesday, the 20th again? Would that work?
That would be good.
Robin, does that work for you?
I'm okay with any date you choose.
Okay. Elizabeth?
That works.
Okay, very good. So we set the date for Tuesday, the 20th of September. I don't believe we're talking about September, at 6:30 p.m. Very good.
What was the date, Michael?
The 20th, September 20th.
Okay.
So Pam, Public Health Director report beyond what you've
Let's see. Just kind of the usual stuff. I mean, oh, I know, there's a warrant article I'd like you guys to review. That's due before our next meeting. I think it's due like September 16th.
Mhm.
So I think I sent it to you guys. It's pretty simple. Basically, what we want to do is when Mary submits reimbursement claims for all kinds of vaccines, we get money back from Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance companies. And so last year, I think, Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was like $32,000 that came back. Unfortunately, it all just goes into the general fund. So our warrant article would be to request that it actually come back to the health department and put it into like a revolving fund. And that way we could use it for like nursing staffing help at vaccination clinics. And then, you know, we still continue to have nursing help to call people that have COVID. It's no longer contact tracing anymore. It's evolved more just to find out if people need help. Like, do they need guidance on how to do telehealth and get Paxlovid, for example, for COVID. So we're still using extra nursing help that we didn't previously have. And all that needs to be paid somehow. And up until June 30th, the end of fiscal year 2022, a lot of that had been paid out by COVID grants, like the federal COVID grants. All that money's gone. So moving forward, it'd be really nice to keep this money in-house and pay for those types of things.
So I can speak a little bit to the, historically, we had a revolving account. And then one of the town managers, a previous town manager, felt that it was created illegally. Revolving accounts have to be voted on every year at town meeting, and this wasn't. So at that time, there was like $40,000 in it that he just took and put into the general fund. So it would be nice to have that money coming back to us. And some other things, we pay for all the flu vaccine I purchase. That costs just about $10,000. So it'd be nice to have that come out of the revolving account.
And that was funded from COVID grants, is what you're saying? That will not exist anymore.
Well, we had COVID funding to help pay for that, but now this would be our own little account to cover those costs.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I read the proposal. I mean, it makes sense to me. I think we should. I mean, so how can we do this? We have to vote on that?
I'm not sure that you have to vote, but what the heck? You could say I got official endorsement by the board.
Why don't you put it into language, and then we'll pass it around and we'll vote on it via email.
Yeah, we can actually, if we don't need to vote on it, we can, if we can just sort of agree
We
by.
can vote on it pending the language.
I think what's going to happen is I'm going to submit it, and I think a town legal counsel reviews them and they like change the language a little bit. So it's more like you're just endorsing the idea rather than like written.
Whatever you think is the best way to approach it.
Okay, I'm fine. I'm fine with what you wrote as a starting point to get the conversation going. I mean, if it comes back from town council that we need to really, you know, if we needed to tighten up the language or something, yes, we'll figure out how to make that happen.
Okay, that sounds good.
So should we just make so I move to endorse the, what's the term I would use?
A warrant article.
Oh, the warrant article, right. Text of the warrant article for the special town meeting.
To create a revolving fund.
For the revolving fund, right? Yeah. So actually, let's also put this document into the minutes so we can refer to it directly. So yeah. So I move to endorse. I move that the board endorse the text of the warrant notice of intent for the 2022 Cohasset special town meeting around a revolving fund for public health programs as written and entered into the record.
Second,
Get a second? All in favor?
aye.
All right, motion carries 3-0. Great. Anything else, Pam?
Yeah, and then the only other thing is, there was, a sewer agreement, not a sewer, there was like a septic agreement back in the day, when they built 4 houses on Atlantic Avenue. And back in 2007, when the sewer commission did the initiative to get, that whole Little Harbor area on sewer, they all connected to sewer. And so now they still have this outstanding septic agreement that's no longer really needed anymore. And, you know, it kind of travels with the deed, it travels with their deeds, you know, it's registered at the Norfolk County Register of Deeds. So they have a lawyer that just wants to officially extinguish that agreement, which is very reasonable and makes sense. So because when it was written, it was saying like all the decisions have to be made by the Cohasset Board of Public Health. They actually need you guys to sign off on extinguishing this agreement. So I sent that to you. So if maybe you guys could just pass it around and sign and scan or something.
We need a motion on that.
You're on mute, Michael.
I think, am I still muted?
No, you're good. You're good now.
Okay, good. Actually, I think that, I don't know that we need to vote on it because I think we can just sign it, right?
I think
Signature.
you just sign it.
Okay, good.
So we'll just circulate it by, figure out how to get signatures on it. When do you need that by?
There's really no deadline. Probably the attorney would like it as soon as you can do it.
Okay, I'll start this. I'll see if I can figure out how to do it using Adobe Sign, which makes it easy for everybody.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay,
That's the only new stuff for me.
okay. Thank you. Mary?
Ready for a motion to adjourn?
What's that?
Mary's got her report next, I think.
One more.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mary.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to report. I'm just back from vacation, so just a couple of things. Camps are wrapping up this week. Camps have been a bit of a challenge this summer. As you saw, my Holly Hill situation, and then another camp employs people from different countries, so they're not up to date on their immunization. So it's been it's been busy with camps. COVID numbers are still, still fairly high. We have medium transmission in Norfolk and Plymouth counties, so I wish it was lower than that. But when you look at I don't know if any of you look at the map every week that comes out and it shows the country, it's kind of scary to see, the COVID rates. I'm going to order, there's a new bivalent COVID vaccine that's coming out, probably will be approved next month. So we can go ahead and order that, and it's not considered a booster dose. It's actually a new vaccine, right? So we are going to offer that along with flu. So this year we'll be doing flu and COVID at the same clinic. So we're going to put in for 400 doses and see how we do. But so that's all coming down the pike. And monkeypox, I'm sure you're paying attention to that. We haven't had any cases yet in Cohasset. We had one close contact who I was able to get him vaccinated. So that's good. But that's about all I have.
Welcome back from vacation.
Hmm?
Welcome back from vacation.
Oh, thank you.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
so I can now move to adjourn.
Yeah.
I will second that motion. All in favor?
Thank
Motion
you all.
carries. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.